Happy New Year! It's 2022! Hi everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtual White, aka Mike Smith, and today is our first video of 2022. Yoo-hoo! And so we're going to cover an oldie but a goodie, the arguments reserved variable. Now the arguments variable allows you to access all the arguments you put into a function as if it was an array. Very easy to use. Want to see how it works? Let's get started. So let's first take a look at a very typical way of using the function. I have an array here of animals. Each entry is an object here that has type, name, and class. And I have a function here called addAnimal, which accepts one argument, which is the name argument, and it just creates or it just pushes actually a new object onto the array. And the only thing I'm going to save here is just name. Both class and type will be unknown. So to use it, I just have addAnimal and pass it, in this case, the name of the animal. And I'm going to do a console.log kind of show you what it looks like. So let's take a look at that within Node. And let's go to Node, arguments. And sure enough, killer got added at the very end of my array. But let's take a look at something. Let's go over back to our code here. What if we had something like this in our code? I kept the old one in there, but the new one now has 5 different arguments: Killer, Caller, Waldo, Samantha, and Una. What will happen now if we try to execute it? Let's go back over to Node. Let's clear the screen off. Let's go to Node Arguments. And there's Killer, but where are the other ones? Well, they're not there because my function only accepts one argument. So how do I take into account if there's a possibility that my function could take more than one argument? Well, that's where the arguments variable comes into. The arguments variable will take every single argument you pass into a function and make it into an array-like structure. So let's take a quick look at that. Let's change our addAnimal function to another one that I have down here. There we are. Here's the arguments.length. So now I'm not passing anything into the array itself, and I could if I wanted to. Into the argument list. I could if I wanted to here. But the key here is that every single argument I pass into the function, which in this case is 5 different arguments, will now be an array-like structure called arguments. And this is a reserved word. You don't have to create this, reserved variable. You don't have to create this variable or anything like that. So I'm treating it, it looks like an array. So I'm basically just doing a very simple for loop here. I'm starting with I is equal to 0, L is length of the arguments array-like structure, excuse me, I is less than L, and so on and so forth, and then I'm just adding name as the entry, the index entry of the arguments variable. And that's it. That's what arguments does, is that within arguments, which is a reserved word, all browsers have it, I will get, well, all JavaScript implementations, excuse me, I will get as an array-like structure all the arguments I pass to the function. So if we go back into Node and take a look at it, let's clear off the screen, go to Node Arguments, and there we go. There's Killer, Carl, Waldo, Samantha, and Uno. So it works exactly like it said it does. All of the different arguments gets placed into an array automatically, an array-like structure automatically, so that you can then parse it out and grab each individual item. So that's it. That's really all there is to arguments. But I'm here to tell you, don't ever use it. Why? Well, because it's old technology. And the thing is here is that arguments, I kept saying, was an array-like structure. You cannot do this. Arguments.for each name. I'm not going to finish it up here. You cannot do that. It will not allow you to do that because arguments is not an array. So I'm going to show you next the preferred way of doing this exact same thing, the ES6 way, so that you can have complete access to your arguments as if it was an array. That's next. So what's better than arguments? What's the new ES6 way of doing it? Well, it's using REST operators, and let's show you how that works. Here is our array, same as raised before. Here I'm calling my addAnimal function with 5 arguments, and here I'm console.logging out. So let's take a look at the function itself. Here is that REST operator. Now, I'm not going to go into details of what a REST operator is. I did that before in a previous JavaScript video. But basically what this is going to do here is it's going to take all of the arguments that I have within my function, in this case the 5 within the function, and it's going to put them into a real array. Not an array like object, like arguments, but a real array. And what's the advantage of that? Well, now you have available to you all of the different array functions. You can have the filters, the maps, the everys, the once, the index find, the find, and blah, 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 all that kind of fun stuff. In this case, I'm just going to use the for each loop, or the for each method, excuse me, on there, and I'm just going to pass it my function to be able to say, hey, why don't you go ahead and push that onto the animals array for each one that you find. Real simple and real quick. The key here is that instead of now just being limited to that arguments variable, which has a very limited things I can do with it, I now transfer everything into an array, and just makes life a whole heck of a lot easier. So you want to see how it runs? Of course, it's going to run exactly the same as it did before. You know that. But let's take a look at it for it. Node array. Yep, there we are. Killer, Carl, Waldo, Samantha, and Una. So that's the key here, is that arguments was the old technology. So if you've seen the old code, they were using arguments, it would have worked great. But I tell you, what you want to do is you want to be able to use REST operators here instead of the arguments variable to give yourself a whole host of different things you can do with that argument list. So again, use REST operators instead of arguments, and you can't go wrong. And that's all there is to using the arguments reserved variable. I hope you enjoyed our video. Hope it didn't bore you to death. Please view all of our videos at www.boringjavascript.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, or check out everything we have at www.thevirtualoid.com. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later.